Laura had always been a young woman full of energy and dreams, living in a small town in the interior of Texas, where life seemed simple, but traditions and rules were strict. For many, that environment represented security. But for Laura, it was a prison. At 19, she discovered she was expecting a child, and the news had a huge impact on her life. The father of the child, Ethan, abandoned her as soon as he found out about the pregnancy. He wasn't ready to be a father and walked away without looking back, leaving Laura heartbroken and unsupported. When she told her parents, Laura was brutally rejected. Her father, furious, accused her of embarrassing the family, and her mother, silent, sided with her husband. Within days, Laura was kicked out of the house. Gossip quickly started to spread around the small town. "Who would want to marry a girl like that?" the neighbors whispered. The shame and abandonment made Laura feel even more alone. However, with her courage intact, she packed her bags, took what little she had, and left for a distant city, hoping for a fresh start. Upon arriving in the new city, Laura faced a harsh reality. She struggled every day to find a job, but her pregnancy complicated things. "We need someone stronger," employers would say, rejecting her without hesitation. With no other options, she began doing informal jobs like washing clothes, cleaning houses, and selling fruits at the market. Even as her belly grew, Laura never stopped working. Each day was a new challenge, but her determination never weakened. She knew she had to fight for a better future for her child. When Michael, her son, was born, Laura promised herself she would give him everything she never had. He became her world. Laura felt that with him, her life had a renewed purpose. Despite the hardships, she worked tirelessly to ensure he had a decent life and lacked for nothing. Michael grew strong and healthy, always curious and intelligent. He was Laura's greatest pride. She knew he had a bright future ahead of him, regardless of the difficulties she still faced. As time went by, Laura began to catch the attention of some men. She was a beautiful, strong, and hard-working woman, and although her son was a big commitment, some still approached her. But whenever they found out about Michael, they quickly backed off. "I can't compete with your son for your attention," one of them said. Another, who initially seemed kind, soon lost interest. "You'll never love me completely," he said. Laura was hurt, but she began to believe that maybe she was meant to live alone. However, she didn't give up on fighting for a better life for both of them. Despite the pain, Laura continued to work hard. Over time, she managed to open a small business selling fabrics and clothes. It wasn't much, but it was enough to feed and clothe Michael. She was proud of what she had achieved with so much effort. When her son turned 10, he became increasingly interested in his studies and excelled in school. He was a bright boy, and Laura felt immense pride as she watched him grow, always eager to share his discoveries. Their home, modest but welcoming, was filled with laughter and happiness. One afternoon, Michael came home from school with a serious expression and hesitated before asking a question Laura had feared for years. "Mum, do I have a dad?" Laura froze. The question she had dreaded had finally come. She turned slowly, and Michael's curious eyes stared at her full of innocence. Laura sat next to him and with a gentle voice replied, "Yes, Michael, you have a dad, but he's no longer with us. He left before you were born." That revelation broke her heart, but she knew she had to be honest. Michael, with his big, curious eyes, asked why his dad had left them. Laura told the truth, even though it pained her. "When I found out I was pregnant, I talked to him about the baby. At first I thought he would be happy, but he wasn't ready to be a dad and chose to leave. I tried to convince him to stay, but he left." Michael listened in silence, absorbing his mother's words. When she finished, he hugged her tightly. "It's okay, Mom. You're the best mom I could have," he said softly. Laura felt the weight of his words, but also relief, knowing her son loved her unconditionally. Time passed, and although Laura's struggles continued, she didn't let herself be defeated. She managed to establish a small business selling fabrics, and little by little she began to see the fruits of her labor. Michael grew up and became an intelligent, respected young man. He graduated with honors and soon made a name for himself in the tech industry, founding his own company. The young man that Laura had raised with so much love was now successful, but she began to worry. Women started to approach him, but she noticed that some seemed more interested in his success than in who he really was. Michael was starting to attract the attention of women who saw him as a financial opportunity. They surrounded him at social events, praising his looks and charm, but Laura knew what was really behind it. She feared he couldn't distinguish true love from material interest. She feared that behind the smiles and sweet words, many women didn't care about the man Michael was, but rather what he could offer. This unsettled her, knowing how much her son had fought to get to where he was. Amidst this worry, Michael shared with Laura that he was seeing a woman named Sophia. She was a sophisticated, beautiful, and confident fashion designer. Michael seemed enchanted by her. "Mom, she's amazing. I really think she's the right one for me," he said. Laura, though smiling and supporting her son, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She didn't want to be negative, but the intuition in her heart told her to stay alert. She wanted Michael to find someone who loved him for who he was, not for what he had. Michael's relationship with Sophia progressed quickly. She was everything Laura had feared. A beautiful, sophisticated, and ambitious woman who seemed more interested in the benefits that Michael's success could offer than in his true essence. Despite Michael's good intentions, Laura couldn't ignore Sophia's superficial behavior. She knew that for her son to be happy, he needed more than luxury and appearances. He needed someone who loved him for who he truly was. This made her question whether Sophia was really the right one for Michael. One day, Michael brought Sophia to dinner at Laura's house. She was nervous, trying to be polite, but the discomfort consumed her. Sophia, with her haughty posture and distant behavior, seemed more concerned with her own appearance than anything else. During dinner, she barely looked at Laura, treating her like a stranger. Deep down, Laura knew something wasn't right. She decided to act cautiously, and in a conversation with Michael, suggested he be more careful with his choices. "You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, Michael," she said lovingly. Michael seemed more and more convinced that Sophia was the right one for him, but Laura couldn't ignore the signs. She knew that deep down, he was just trying to fill a void left by the absence of true love, no matter how hard she tried to mask it. Laura couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia was more interested in Michael's status than in who he really was. She thought, will he notice this before it's too late? Her worry grew with each passing day. One evening, while at home alone, Laura was attacked by 3 men on her way to the market. They surrounded her, demanding she hand over the shopping bag. But to her surprise, a young woman appeared out of nowhere, challenging the men. With a firm stance and determined look, she told them to leave her alone, threatening to call the police. The young woman, named Emily, was the heroine of the day. Laura, still trembling, thanked her deeply. Emily, with a gentle smile, escorted her home, offering protection and support. Touched by Emily's courage and kindness, Laura couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was this young woman so willing to help a stranger without expecting anything in return? The next day, Laura asked a neighbor about Emily. She found out that Emily worked as a secretary at Michael's company. Laura was surprised to learn that Emily came from a simple, humble background, but always helped those in need. This made her reflect on the true nature of people and question whether Sophia, with all her sophistication, really had a pure heart. Over time, Laura began to observe Emily more closely. She seemed to be a humble and dedicated person who treated everyone with respect, regardless of their position. Meanwhile, Sophia, who worked with Michael, became increasingly arrogant. Laura knew that the way Emily treated others was a reflection of her character. She thought, can Michael see what I see in Emily? Will he look beyond Sophia's facade and realize what really matters? One evening during dinner at her house, Laura brought up the subject of Emily with Michael. "Have you noticed Emily?" she asked, trying to be delicate. "She's a good person, Michael. Humble, kind, always respecting others." Michael, uncomfortable, shook his head. "Mom, I respect Emily, but she's too simple for me. So I'm more attracted to women like Sophia, sophisticated women." Laura didn't let it discourage her and continued, "Sophistication is superficial. What really matters is the heart, kindness, loyalty. That's what builds a true relationship. Michael, reluctant, didn't seem fully convinced, but Laura knew he needed time. In the following days, Laura noticed that her son seemed more distant, maybe because he was starting to question his own choices. She kept praying that Michael would see beyond Sophia's superficiality. In a moment of desperation, Laura had an idea. What if I test Sophia? What if she's not what she appears to be? She decided to do something unexpected. She would move into Michael's house, but not as his mother. She would pose as a maid, and in this way she would see how Sophia really treated her. If she passed the test, Laura would accept her. Otherwise, she would protect her son from a false woman. When Laura arrived at Michael's house, she was treated like a stranger. Sophia, with her superior attitude, barely glanced at her. Laura pretended to be a simple maid, doing what she was asked without questioning. She closely observed Sophia's behavior. During one of the meals, Michael yelled at Laura for no reason, just to test Sophia's reaction. But she didn't care, didn't try to intervene. Laura knew at that moment that what she feared was coming true. Sophia had no empathy, no compassion for others. During the test, Laura witnessed the true face of Sophia. The way she treated the staff, including Laura, was cruel and disrespectful. She never spoke kindly and always showed disdain for anyone she considered inferior. When Michael asked her to help Laura with some tasks, Sophia refused curtly, clearly showing her lack of interest and compassion. Laura felt devastated, but she knew this was the truth she needed to see. She was finally sure that Sophia was not the right person for her son. One afternoon, Laura decided to talk to Michael about what had happened. "I needed to know who you were really choosing to be part of your life, Michael," she said firmly. "I've seen enough to know that Sophia isn't what she seems. She has no respect for others, and that's something you can't ignore." Michael, shocked, didn't know what to think. He had fallen in love with Sophia, but now he clearly saw the truth about her. "I can't believe she did this," Michael murmured, disappointed. When Laura showed the video recording of Sophia discussing her plans to manipulate Michael to secure his fortune, Michael was frozen. He never imagined she could do something so cruel. The disappointment was enormous. "I really believed in her," Michael said, his voice choked. Laura hugged him, trying to console her son, but she knew that, at that moment, he would need time to overcome Sophia's betrayal. "Now you know, Michael," she said, "true loyalty and love come from a pure heart." The revelation about Sophia made Michael question everything he believed to be important. But on the other hand, he began to see Emily in a different light. She didn't treat him like a prize, but as a real person. He realized that what he needed wasn't a woman who was sophisticated on the outside, but someone who loved him for who he was, someone with a generous heart. In a moment of clarity, Michael approached Laura and said, "Mom, you were right. Emily is the right one for me."